Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Wow, I don't even know how to start this. Good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, May 24, 2019. Time for another show, but really, what's the point? We give up. It's all over. The president is insane, and I guess I have to tell you that. Again, like Mount Everest, we are clogged up and backlogged with stories climbing, reaching, hoping to reach the summit in line 200 and 300 deep. And we're not going to be able to get everybody a chance to be featured today. But gosh, there's a lot to cover. Daily Co's Radio is live now. Bill tells us all the way from Portland, Maine. We always have room to fit him in, except when we don't. There we go. Pretty much good blanket statement has covered everything. We always read your morning tweets except when we don't. But fair warning. We are told Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman, I have time enough to tell you that, intends to spend 2 hours treating you like his maid, his pilots, his makeup artists, and his wardrobe consultants, and he may even accuse you of treason. Yes, all this happening in the last 24 hours or so, maybe 48 hours, if we stretch back to include Kellyanne here. By the way, great list. Way to connect with the coal miners there, Kellyanne. Everybody knows exactly how you would treat maids, pilots, makeup artists, and wardrobe consultants. What? Of course, most people don't have those. I'm sure she would say, well, that's the point. She's a rich lady. She was talking about Nancy Pelosi, treating her with disdain. This is the second tack she's tried with explaining to the press how embarrassed she was to have been blown off by Nancy Pelosi. Apparently after the temper tantrum, which wasn't a temper tantrum because I have 7 minutes worth of video of my aides being forced virtually at gunpoint to come to the microphone and tell everybody how calm I was during this temper tantrum. That's where we are. I think you all know the story. If you're coming to this from, Pluto, I can't pause to explain it to you. But at any rate, I guess after walking out of the meeting on infrastructure, which was never really going to be a meeting about infrastructure, Kellyanne Conway approaches Pelosi and asks her if she'd like to, apparently asked her if she'd like to respond or if there's anything, I guess any message she wanted to relay to the president or something like that. And she said, I'll talk to the president. Don't worry about it. If I need to talk to the president, I'll talk to the president. I'm not going to tell you, staffer, which Kellyanne Conway took terribly. And, it's not nice to be told that. But Kellyanne Conway is staff, and you're talking about the third-ranking constitutional officer being asked, do you want an intermediary like me to carry a message from number 3 to number 1 here for you? No, I'll talk to him. And if I don't talk to him, I don't talk to him. He's an idiot, and it doesn't matter. Is basically what she's saying. But I don't have anything for you. So she got all upset about that. Apparently her immediate response was, wow, that's really pro-woman of you. That was really going to do anything. But I guess so later on she had one of those, I should have thought of to say this moments. And so now she has spent, I guess the last 24 hours in front of the camera saying, oh, she's a rich lady that treated me like a maid. But she went on to say makeup artist, wardrobe consultant. And I think she probably thought everyone would understand that I mean that Nancy Pelosi maintains a stable of maids, pilots, makeup artists, wardrobe consultants. But instead, it just reminded us that Kellyanne Conway has makeup artists and wardrobe consultants, and that for the rest of the world, insulting somebody about their makeup artists and wardrobe consultants in a knowing way, well, that's how she treated them. It doesn't really ring true, but nothing really rings true from her anyway. So whatever. That's the least of our problems, of course, but I don't know. It was in Bill's tweet, so I'm talking about it. That's the way we do the show, okay? Anyway, let's see. We have more information to get through. I'm really not even sure how we're going to handle this flood of information. I am going to open up, I guess, Pocket and take a look at what's in there. And then the rest of it got so crowded in Pocket, just like Mount Everest. If you haven't seen those pictures, take a look. But it got so crowded in there that I was just retweeting things, living in the moment, as it were. And there was no point in putting all the things that I thought were important in Pocket because I would just lose track of everything. So I two-tracked things. But as a result, it's disorganized. So I need to look down the Twitter feed and see what has interested me enough to respond, but that hasn't made it into Pocket. But then Pocket is jammed full of amazing stories as well. We also yesterday, of course, brought Armando onto the show, and he was on his way in yesterday to tell us about what happened at the CAP conference, but we got sidetracked by constitutional crisis again. And I guess I would like to say that the door's open to discuss CAP again, but it really isn't. The door's open to discuss anything else. And if you switched subjects and went to CAP, I wouldn't execute you for treason, let's say. But it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Besides which, we'd soon enough get distracted and go back to the real crises, which is that our incompetent moron president, child moron president, is horrible and himself ought to be executed for treason. But, we're supposed to be careful with those terms, et cetera, et cetera. But that's all out the window. All right. Where are we? Let's see. I don't even know. There's no order. One, many people are angry about the fact that a fake video of Nancy Pelosi is circulating. Apparently, the video, there might be more than one. I don't know. One of them is apparently slowed down to, half speed or whatever, but then the pitch of the voice is brought back up to make her sound drunk. Another, or maybe the same one, is about her stammering through a press conference, but is essentially an edited piece. They edited out all of the coherent words and just have her, the few ums and ahs and stumblings for regaining your footing when you're speaking extemporaneously. We do that here. I will say for the record that to me, one of the funniest things I've ever seen was slowing down a Trump comment to half speed and then picking the pitch back up so that he sounded drunk. I think that's hilarious. However, now we're all supposed to be mad at that having been done to Pelosi. Although, I guess the difference between the two, of course, was that I thought that was hilarious, and it was hilarious because it was being circulated along with a note that said, what I did here, it wasn't me, but somebody else who has better skills. If I could do this, I would be doing this all day long. I'll admit that to you right now. But they were circulating those videos of Trump with what this other person, like to do is slow down Trump comments to half speed and then, restore the pitch of the voice so that it doesn't sound. But, his normal voice pitch, and but at half speed, and it really does make him sound like he's drunk. And we've played it on the show, and I'll admit it's hilarious. And I don't know if that's what they did to Nancy Pelosi. I didn't play the tape. I wasn't interested. I saw the one of her stammering that I saw Trump tweeting around. But, one was being labeled as manipulated. The other was being circulated as though it were real and unedited. And that's bad. And, of course, the president got caught up in it, and everything gets magnified whenever the president gets caught up in it. And that's really why presidents shouldn't really be on Twitter very often. But, okay. So everybody's upset about that one, and I guess rightly so. I'm going to scroll back anyway and see if I can't find that funny video. Oh, yeah, here it is. Arlen Parsa, who circulated this, and he said, my favorite way to listen to the president is slowed down to half speed because it reveals how oftentimes his logic is indistinguishable from that of a drunk person. And that is true, and it was hilarious when it happened. And he added music, too, that also only made it more hilarious. I have it here, ready at my fingertips. It only takes a minute to get there. And we won't even have to hear the whole thing. But I wonder whether he either quickly got bored about that. He said it was his favorite way to listen to the president. It's my favorite too, but I don't think he produced any more of these things. But let's see. Just for fun, because otherwise we'll lose our minds. Let's listen to this clip. This is from back in January.
If I build a steel wall rather than a concrete wall, it will actually be stronger than a concrete. Steel is stronger than concrete, okay? Steel is stronger than concrete.
I mean, the music makes it, right?
It will actually be stronger. Listen, if I build a wall,
I mean, really.
you can't really see through a concrete wall.
No, you
Want
can't.
to be able to see through the wall.
Right.
A see-through wall, it's possible that it will look better. It will be a more beautiful wall than having a concrete wall. I think people will like that.
Yes, I think so too. And I mean, obviously, that was never circulated as a true to life representation of the way the president speaks, but it was very revealing. And of course, I mean, he slurs terribly because he speaks. You know, he's sloppy. He's a sloppy guy, but he speaks off the cuff, and I can't fault him necessarily for that. But it's there, and slowing it down really highlights how ridiculous his ramblings really are. Whereas, I mean, you sound drunk when you speak slow, but it helps if, you know, if there's some substance behind what you're saying. I don't know how drunk that's going to sound, or else you sound like a drunk philosopher. I don't know what it sounded like when they did it to Nancy Pelosi, but at any rate, that has got everyone up in arms. I will note that for the record, and I think that's the end of that discussion. Let's see. Other things that happened. Let's see. Yesterday, of course, apparently he spent several minutes, and I think the person who tweeted this around pointed out there was like 7.5 minutes of video of Trump insisting yesterday during, he must have had some farmers in the White House, and apparently they had hats on that said make potatoes great again? It must be potato farmers. I don't know if that means they're from Idaho necessarily, but anyway, they were there in their cowboy hats and standing behind him, and he was doing some farmer event. But you know how he does press events. He just switches subjects. I want to talk about how there was no collusion, and this is a total witch hunt. But potatoes, sir. Yeah, well, what are they going to do? Object to me talking about what I want? Shut up, you idiots in hats. You know, that's basically what's going on. They're not going to say anything. So he spent 7.5 minutes, though, saying I wasn't having a temper tantrum, as Nancy Pelosi and liberal liars and witch hunters are saying about my tantrum yesterday when I walked out on the infrastructure meeting. How calm was I? I now will bring up, for the next 7.5 minutes, force White House aides to come to the podium and attest to my calmness, including one of the assistant press secretaries who wasn't actually there and wasn't able to observe how calm he was, but nonetheless came up to say, I absolutely saw him and he was never calmer. Record-breaking calmness from this president. No president has ever been calmer, including those who are dead. And so they spent quite a while on that one yesterday. Because he's an insane idiot. Now, in the same press conference at which he made everybody swear how calm he was, I don't know the chronology of it, which came first, but it's obviously the same press conference. He's wearing the same stupid tie, for one thing, but you can see the cowboy hats behind his head. So, you know it's the same press conference, same setting, same people behind him. Same press conference at which he says, I'm so calm that I'm going to bring you 10 people or whatever who are going to attest to my calmness. He went on to say, by the way, I have a targeted assassination list of American domestic political enemies, and I'm going to read it to you. He didn't preface it that way, but what he was asked once again, and I think, I don't know, maybe this show was first. It was the first show that I listened to where they actually said this, and who knows where else they might have said it. But it got pushed back on, and it was wrong. I told you when Sarah Sanders came out with her stupid comments about how everybody who was criticizing the president was guilty of treason. Well, no, she probably means that it's ridiculous for people to accuse the president of treason. It isn't. He's a traitor. But that was the spin that was put on it. And since then, the president, I think, has at least twice, obviated all of that. It's no longer operative, her statement, and he has come out since twice and said, no, it absolutely is treason. And so yesterday he was asked by a reporter at this White House event of whatever sort, you've said that some of your critics are guilty of treason. Although, I mean, I think what he was saying at the time was the people who tried to demonstrate that you were being manipulated by the Russians or who were colluding with Russians or are otherwise corrupt are guilty of treason. And he said, who specifically? Because you've reminded everybody that treason is punishable by death in this country. And who specifically do you have in mind as being guilty of treason? And therefore, would you be sentencing to death? And Trump, because he's Trump, took the bait and decided to list off people that he guessed we're supposed to think he's calling for their execution because they're traitors. And it was James Comey and all the people of the FBI. Here's the exchange in transcript. Aaron Rupar from Vox put this one out. The reporter asks, "Sir, the Constitution says treason is punishable by death. You've accused your adversaries of treason. Who specifically are you accusing of treason?" And Trump answers, a number of people, and in his fashion. If you look at, he always loves to say that, I don't have evidence, but if you look at this or you look at that, that's his way of levying the accusation. He never just simply says it outright. By the way, does it say in the Constitution that treason is punishable by death? I don't think so. I mean, I think we're making some more mistakes here. But we were just talking the other day about how precision is necessary. This is an easy enough mistake. It doesn't actually say that it's punishable by death in the Constitution, but it is punishable by death under our statutes. So, I can forgive that. It does say, what it says. It defines treason in Article 3. Interestingly enough, at the end of Article 3, Section 3. Treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted. All these things, right? It doesn't say anywhere about what the punishment is, although it does say Congress shall have the power to declare the punishment of treason. So I guess they did, and it's death. Okay, anyway. So, how long is the little clip here of Trump doing it? It's long. It's 1 minute and 45 seconds. Too long for us to play all the way through, but he gives a remarkable recitation of who to look at. If you look at Comey, McCabe, if you look at Strzok, is that how he pronounces that? His lover, as he loves to say, Lisa Page, etc. And he goes on about Lisa, the lovely, Lisa. And somebody commented to me today on Twitter, he has the most fascinating / perverted and possibly disgusting way of talking about Strokes. Is it Strokes and Page? Here we are. Mark McKenna, who tweeted this. He's McKenna Mark, if you're looking for him on Twitter. Honestly, every time Trump talks about the Stroke Page affair, he seems jealous. Like the lovely Lisa Page, as he puts it, should have been having an affair with him. And he still thinks he might be able to make it happen. It's weird. It's weird as the S word, which is, if you put the word "the" in there, then it makes it even weirder. But it's as weird as S. You get the point. And it is. And I don't know whether I don't know. I don't know what's going on in his head, but it is very strange. He's weird. And all of this stems from his wacko press conference at which, he essentially says, tell everybody how calm I am, and then goes to, a list of, execute them, a list of people that he wants dead. By the way, worth pointing out that, we are now at the point in our history where the President of the United States is reading a death list out loud at a press conference, and everybody's like, well, we have to report what he said. There's danger in the president sanctioning the death of certain domestic political enemies. Let's say, for instance, someone should take it upon themselves to send bombs to all of those enemies. Oh, wait, that has actually happened. So, but after that, though, certainly after people have demonstrated a willingness to send bombs to your enemies list, you wouldn't put out another enemies list along with an implied sanction of their murder, because they are traitors and it is punishable by death. And here's my list. So, no problems there. And of course, I guess if you couple that with his plans, I guess this weekend, because it's Memorial Day weekend starting, well, now for many people, his plans are to pardon a squad of spree killers currently sitting in or awaiting trial or sitting in military prison for war crimes, including, like we said, spree murders. And he'll start off their relationship with them by telling them, I will pardon your murders. Heinous though they may be, I will pardon them. And you will be, of course, as he is always, you will be loyal to me. And I am pardoning you because you're murderers and because in some cases you are rogue snipers. Just happens to be the case. And by the way, here is a list of people I think are traitors, and you know what we do with traitors in this country. We execute them. So if they were murdered, that might be problematic in another setting, but I'm the president and I can pardon you. Would I pardon you for a vicious murder? I just did. So have no doubt. Not a dangerous combination in the least, and we should probably wait for the murder report to come out before we decide what we're going to do about that. How's that as a solution? Okay, I'm unhappy. I might as well let you know all of that. And let's see, I'm going to follow that up with Quinta Jurecic's with an opportunity to mispronounce almost assuredly Quinta Jurecic's last name. I would love to look that up one day. That's on my list too. I'm going to make a list not of people to kill, but of people whose pronunciations I need to explore and finally get it done and be ready for the air one day. She puts this one in The Atlantic rather than over at Lawfare, though it may also be there, but this being the more prestigious, we'll read it out of The Atlantic. Impeachment is a refusal to accept the unacceptable. If you have taken offense at the way I've expressed things today, I'll read you this. Maybe this will make you feel better. Taking action against Trump, the subtitle says, is a rejection of the idea that nothing matters, which would be great for me because I'm constantly saying, LOL, YOLO, nothing matters. Or it certainly seems that way. What can talk me out of it? Well, let's read this piece. In 1838, that ought to fix it for me, Abraham Lincoln gave a speech on the perpetuation of our political institutions, better known today as the Lyceum Address. Everything he did was an address. He's that kind of guy. It's the hat. Dwelling on the threats facing the American political structure. I defy you to speak off the cuff in that hat and not have it be referred to as an address. Dwelling on the threats facing the American political structure, he argued that the United States was protected from foreign invasion. At what point, then, Lincoln asked, is the approach of danger to be expected? In other words, obviously, the danger is coming from here. I answer, I should just let Lincoln speak for himself. Yes, probably a good idea. I answer, if it ever reaches us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. It can with the internet now. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. And I guess, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt again, Mr. Lincoln, to say, even though the danger may originate over the internet, again, even so, the key to Russian interference in our political system is that we're ripe for that kind of division and easily manipulated along those lines. So, if destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, not yet, we must live through all time or die by suicide. Yes, and of course, as we know, the Constitution is not a suicide pact, unless it is. The description of the United States as a nation of free men 3 decades before emancipation was a bit of a stretch, but there is wisdom in Lincoln's warning. It has been on my mind lately, Quinta says, as the country debates the question of impeachment in the wake of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report. Here are the facts. The president is unsuited to his office. They should have been obvious. That should have been obvious well before the release of the special counsel's report. was, but the text of the report, even with a smattering of redactions, makes his unfitness brutally clear. He shows no understanding of the responsibilities of the presidency. He delights in the abuse of his power. As Memorial Day approaches, he is reportedly planning to celebrate the holiday by pardoning, among other service members accused of war crimes, a Navy SEAL scheduled to stand trial for the murder of multiple unarmed Iraqi civilians. To respond appropriately to Donald Trump's behavior is to risk appearing absurd, because his own conduct is so extreme that any proportionate reaction could be deemed an overreaction. The industry of anti-Trumpism is devoted to describing opposition to the president as hysterical. But an emotional excess of anger and sadness is exactly what this excessive presidency merits. What this means, in part, is that reaction to the president muted by circumstance or a desire to appear reasonable will always be insufficient. The only adequate response to Trump is the cry of protest. But every protest ends, even as the outrages that provoked it persist. There is a constitutional mechanism for sounding that outrage in a more enduring way. It's the impeachment process. You might have guessed. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi remains firmly opposed to beginning impeachment proceedings, even as multiple Democratic members, and it's not a majority yet, multiple Democratic members of the House Judiciary Committee have called for the start of an inquiry, and one Republican, Representative Justin Amash, has outright declared that the president should be impeached. Pelosi's argument appears to be that there is no need to begin this process, that Democrats can obtain information through litigation without resorting to an impeachment inquiry, and that such an inquiry risks shoring up support for Trump as the country heads toward the next presidential election. We'll continue after this. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. We'll continue with Quinta Jurecic. I wish I knew. I should have looked it up during the break. Article here about impeachment, and impeaching Trump means the refusal to accept the unacceptable. We had just recapped Nancy Pelosi's general attitude toward things, and that she thought her insistence that impeachment could be some sort of tactical error or strategic error. Off the cuff, I'm not going to be able to pick out which one it is. Continue on. It's an error. That's the point that she's trying to make, and that we can get the same information through traditional inquiry, which is up in the air at this point. Though I guess at this point I'll pause to note the news reported last evening. Let's see, did I put it away here or did I? Yeah, there we are. The Hills report I grabbed. Key House committee obtains subpoenaed Trump financial documents from 2 banks, according to reports here. And that's a key distinction, and I did celebrate that last night and say, obtained. Now we are talking. And, of course, it comes from out of the Financial Services Committee's subpoena to Deutsche Bank and Capital One, and I guess others. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, look at this. There were 9 institutions. I didn't realize how many institutions. There were 9 institutions subpoenaed by the House panel. 2 of the 9 have complied, and I guess maybe the celebration is a little bit premature. Neither of them are Deutsche Bank or Capital One. Wells Fargo and TD Bank, apparently. Let's see. 2 of the 9 institutions subpoenaed by the House panel have complied, with Wells Fargo providing a few thousand requested documents and TD Bank providing a smaller amount, according to NBC. Citing a source who had seen the documents. Waters also subpoenaed Citigroup, Morgan Stanley, Royal Bank of Canada, and Toronto Dominion Bank. JP Morgan Chase with the... wait a second here. This is a totally different situation here. What am I looking at here? Yeah, well, they are about Trump financial reports. Where's Deutsche Bank? And I guess we better read this, because I was all set to... I'm getting distracted here. I was all set to say, all right, the theory that we can get what we want out of ordinary litigation might have more merit if we've obtained the information. That was my big sticking point the other day, was saying, okay, we won in court. Big deal. Did we get the information yet? If not, then we're not done. And their plan is to stall as long as possible. Then I see this headline that says, obtained the information. Then reading the story, I find out it's not the one we thought, but I guess it's at least some of the stuff we wanted. Let's see. While the subpoenas are not public, they reportedly assert the government has the power under the Bank Secrecy Act, interestingly, another statutory basis, to access financial information to investigate potential money laundering, according to NBC. So that means that the Trump tax records are not the only ones with underlying statutory authority as well. By the way, statutory authority should stand in pretty well for any demands for legitimate legislative interest, right? I mean, not just the fact, I maintain that it should be, or could be. We could consider the question of whether simply making the request is enough evidence of legislative interest. I guess that does leave out the possibility of illegitimate legislative interest, and so maybe there does need to be some inquiry. And the court seemed somewhat interested in providing a little bit of justification for the legitimacy part. But this is, I think, is important to note as we analyze these things. In the request and then subsequent subpoena for the Trump tax records, there was this underlying legislation that says, look, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee gets to do this. The fact that there is previous congressional authorization for this request, that provides the legitimacy necessary to turn their expression of interest, I think, undeniably into a legitimate expression of interest. There was a congressional debate and vote on whether or not this power ought to be granted. And the fact that they agreed that it should and that they enshrine it in statute, I think, at least weighs extraordinarily heavily in the question of whether or not any such interest will be legitimate. They've legitimized it by saying we can visualize times in the future when we would legitimately need this. It's not an off-the-cuff thing or something that they made up in order to pursue a political enemy at the spur of the moment. It certainly was inspired, I think, by the necessity of investigating corruption, and I guess you could declare yourself an enemy of political enemy of corruption and be a safe person, but that would be back in the Teapot Dome era, I guess. But this too, apparently the Bank Secrecy Act now also provides a statutory basis for arguing, no, a previous Congress, without any reference whatsoever to the even the inkling of a Trump administration, Congress considered whether or not this was of legitimate interest and has decided to enshrine it statutorily to show that it is. So that's pretty major in terms of analyzing this. But this goes on to say that the news of having secured that information came the same day a federal judge ruled that Deutsche Bank and Capital One may comply with subpoenas by Waters and House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff. I didn't realize that they had both subpoenaed this information. But it's interesting that I forgot about the fact that there might be more banks out there. But it's good that we're obtaining the information. It doesn't close the case, and it I guess now that we've read the article, it doesn't mean that Deutsche Bank has turned over its records yet, though, we did discuss how the case was different in kind and in its posture because of the fact that you had banks that were interested in complying and were being blocked by a third party, Trump. Anyway, let's jump back to Quinta Jurecic's piece here. She had just outlined Pelosi's argument as, sounding pretty reasonable. And she does, in fact, follow up by saying this is a very practical argument. The argument being there's no need to begin the impeachment process. Democrats can obtain information through litigation without resorting to impeachment inquiry. The counter argument being that they could do much better in their litigation if there was one, but you might not necessarily need it. So far, the only proof of the validity of the assertion has been in a case wherein the subpoenaed targets wanted to comply from the very beginning. We have yet to see how successful we'll be in prying information, for instance, out of Mazars, in which the judge there was just as adamant that the Trump argument was stupid and inapposite and founded in nothing, but it so far hasn't resulted in the obtaining any information. So I guess the science is still out on that one. Anyway, yes, it's a practical argument that she makes, but there is value to an impeachment inquiry and to impeachment as an act in itself, regardless of whether the Senate will convict or what the president's supporters will think. Pelosi and the more hard-headed Democratic strategists regard this position as overly idealistic. That's the point, she says. Let's find out about what that means. I have returned again and again in recent weeks, not just to the Lyceum address, but also to Albert Camus' The Rebel, the philosopher's attempt to grapple with what it means to live morally in an absurd world. I guess we'll have to read that one. For Camus, the foundational human experience is one of outrage, a, quote, fruitless struggle with facts, an incoherent pronouncement of pain and frustration with injustice. Camus' reasoning can apply to an almost endless range of situations, from frustration with a corrupt political regime to rage at the inevitability of death and the silence of God. And by the way, I'm enraged with the silence of God in dealing with this corrupt political regime as well. But it is said that God bides his time, although other people say she bides hers. Much is absurd about the Trump administration in a colloquial sense. Consider the spectacle of a tweeting commander-in-chief, the most powerful man in the world, spending his time insisting on falsehoods and sniping over obvious insults. But his presidency is also absurd in the philosophical sense. What better to emphasize the gap between the desire for the Constitution to mean something and the reality of the document as some words on paper than a scene of Donald J. Trump swearing an oath to faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. The Constitution is what Camus would call a closed universe, a space of coherence and unity in an incoherent world in which words carry weight and actions have consequences. Trump's disrespect for the law is a reminder of how fragile that structure of meaning can be. For that reason, there is a real service in using impeachment proceedings to push back against the notion that, in the parlance of the internet, LOL, nothing matters. Susan Hennessy and I have argued that the House of Representatives has a duty to begin an impeachment inquiry insofar as representatives swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution and to well and faithfully execute the duties of their office. By the way, that's the best answer to, well, we didn't run on impeachment. I know what you didn't run on, but then I listened to you swear that oath. And, I mean, you were running to take that oath, were you not? You were running to support that oath? Yeah, of course you were. Don't deny it. You can't. And if you do, you're out. Another way of saying that is that an impeachment inquiry depends on an insistence that this oath really means something, and that the president's oath means something as well. Keith Whittington, likewise, has written that impeachment is partially a matter of norm creation and norm reinforcement. And Yoni Applebaum, who was cited yesterday by Greg, argued that the impeachment of Andrew Johnson drew the United States closer to living up to its ideals. I don't know. I have never considered it in that sense, but possible. Gerald Ford, as a member of the House of Representatives, argued in 1970 that an impeachable offense is whatever a majority of the House of Representatives considers it to be at a given moment in history. He was not wrong that impeachment is a political process. It is, after all, entrusted to Congress. To treat the subject as an entirely political calculation, though, as Ford did, and as Pelosi appears to be doing now, is to slouch toward nihilism. Although, okay, to that end, I guess I'm guilty there. But I mean, I think it's problematic. And I suppose that our Supreme Court nihilism is accurate but undesirable. It's undesirable, certainly. I wouldn't mind reversing it. It just happens to describe what's actually happening here. Treating the words high crimes and misdemeanors as if they hold real significance, however, is a way of protesting that the world should not be as it inevitably is. Okay, see, there we go. Cleared it up. This is perhaps overly earnest, but there is a real humanity and purity of purpose in asserting earnestness against the void. The House should take up the task of examining the president's conduct as detailed in the Mueller report and evaluating whether it is fitting of the person who holds the nation's highest office. It should investigate the many other instances of potentially impeachable conduct by the president, from tweets to pardons. It should debate how to understand what constitutes a high crime and misdemeanor, and whether relatively minor offenses can accumulate over time into something worthy of impeachment. The House should fulfill its constitutional duties in the process of constitutional interpretation, which by its nature is a declaration that the Constitution holds some significance. Lincoln's warning of the approach of danger in context was less about the political fracturing that would lead to the Civil War and more about the creeping acceptance of what should have been unacceptable. He decried the increasing disregard for law which pervades the country, the growing disposition to substitute the wild and furious passions in lieu of the sober judgment of courts, and the worse than savage mobs for the executive ministers of justice. It was this, in his mind, that pointed toward the death of the nation. The antidote he offered was the support of the Constitution and laws. In the absence of that, the cynical country would become vulnerable to the approach of a dictator. Distinction will be his paramount object, and nothing left to be done in the way of building up, he would set boldly to the task of pulling down. And we have thus reached our conclusion. A very interesting entry into, I guess now, a vast field of writing on the subject. But I thought an interesting addition to, I don't know, in order just to consider these things. Yes, Ricky chiming in from PEI. FYI, she says, from PEI, more initials now. TD and Toronto Dominion is the same company. Yes, I realized as I was reading it, I kind of, they punctuated it correctly, and I thought we were reaching the end of the sentence because of the "and" in there, but it wasn't the last company being listed. So yeah, I mean, it was clear. It didn't occur to me. I don't think I would have been able to tell you what the TD and TD Bank is, but the writer made it obvious. I just didn't do a very good job of reading it. But thank you for pointing that out. In case it didn't come across correctly, I don't see how it could have verbally. And you're not going to go read I can't believe you wouldn't read the source material. But if you don't have time, that's the answer. So thank you. That's why I took the pause to point that out. I could have done a better job reading that one. Speaking of Justin Amash, he had another tweet storm yesterday, which I thought summed things up nicely. For those of us who haven't read all the way through the Mueller report. I'm very angry with myself for not having done this, but here's a relatively brief, versus 400 pages, restatement of why Republicans included need to be, everyone, Republicans included, need to be on board with the, be open to the idea of impeachment inquiries at this point. Mueller's report describes a consistent effort by the president to use his office to obstruct or otherwise corruptly impede the Russian election interference investigation because it put his interests at risk. And I think, we all inherently know that, but it's good to hear it stated outright. The president has an obligation not to violate the public trust, including using official powers for corrupt purposes. This is where he does a good job in getting beyond the Mueller report here. For instance, presidents have the authority to nominate judges, but a president couldn't select someone to nominate because they'd promised the president money. And as we exited yesterday's show, of course, we were being shown exactly that one of Manafort's bankers apparently offered Manafort, but I'm not sure where the money was going, offered $16 million up just outright in exchange for getting a position in the government. I want to read you that story, but that was something that like half to a dozen of you showed me that article on our way out. But of course, yesterday being crowded, just like today, we only got to blurt it out at the end. So I don't know whether he was tweeting in reaction to that and had that in mind because of the story. But if not, that's extraordinary. Anyway, so again, for instance, presidents have the authority to nominate judges, but president shouldn't select someone to nominate because they've promised the president money. That, of course, applies across the board. There's a story out there today about the president continually harassing the head of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers about wall building projects, and that he wants one of these contracts to go to a particular company that's been a donor, which is exactly, again, what you're not supposed to be doing. Who knows whether any money exchanged hands on these pardons. Any number of the things that the president would otherwise, on the surface of it, have the right to do. If you're doing it for corrupt purpose, that's a high crime or misdemeanor, and we should look at that. That's why we need all your records. This principle, he says, extends to all the president's powers. Oops, I just said that. Including the authority over federal investigations, federal officials, and pardons. That's extraordinary that he would say pardons in there. President Trump has had an incentive to undermine the investigation into Russian interference, which included investigating contacts between Russia and the Trump campaign. The investigation threatened to uncover information, including criminal activity, that could put Trump's interests at risk. Ultimately, the investigation did uncover very unflattering information about the president, his family, his associates, his campaign, and his business. And that's very, light touch that he gives, unflattering information. Okay. Continuing on here, it also revealed criminal activities, some of which were committed by people in Trump's orbit, and in the case of Michael Cohen's campaign finance violation, on Trump's behalf. The investigation began before the president was elected and inaugurated. After Trump assumed the powers of the presidency, Mueller's report shows that he used those powers to try to obstruct and impede the investigation. That's what makes it so serious, yes. Some excuse Trump's conduct based on allegations of issues with the investigation. Now, of course, the spying, and we're going to look into that, and I want to find out where the Steele dossier came from, et cetera, et cetera. That's will be our next story, where that has gone. Some excuse Trump's conduct based on allegations of issues with the investigation, but no one disputes the appropriateness of investigating election interference, which included investigating contacts between the Trump campaign and people connected to the Russian government. I'll pause here and say, even if you don't believe there was any collusion, even if you're a no collusion person, either that there was none or that it wasn't proven or that it didn't rise to a certain level, if you agree that there was a basis for investigating whether or not the Russians were interfering, and in so investigating you find out, that members of the Trump campaign are in frequent contact with Russians, you could be forgiven for reaching the conclusion that there was something untoward happening here and that it required further investigation. If you thought that the Chinese were the only ones interfering in the election and there was lots of discussion with Russians, you might say, I wonder if I should be looking for Russian collusion as well, given what we know they've done elsewhere, the Ukraine, for instance, and we learned the other day, Finland and everywhere else that they've been interfering. But you also could be forgiven for saying, well, I'm on the lookout for Chinese manipulation here. I want to see who in the campaign has been talking to the Chinese. But if you think that the interference is coming from Russia and you find people talking to the people you suspect of interfering, you might come to the conclusion that there might be something to this after all, and that this might be in furtherance of it. So you'd want to know what was going on. Now, some examples in Mueller's report, Amesh continues, of the president's obstructing and impeding the investigation include: 1. Trump asked the FBI director to stop investigating Michael Flynn, who had been his campaign advisor and national security advisor and who had already committed a crime by lying to the FBI. 2, and these are Arabic numerals, after Attorney General Sessions recused himself from the Russian investigation on the advice of DOJ ethics lawyers, Trump directly asked Sessions to reverse his recusal so that he could retain control over the investigation and help the president. 3, Trump directed the White House counsel, Don McGahn, to have special counsel Mueller removed on the basis of pretextual conflicts of interest that Trump's advisors had already told him were ridiculous and could not justify removing the special counsel. 4, when that event was publicly reported, Trump asked that McGahn make a public statement and create a false internal record stating that Trump had not asked him to fire the special counsel, and suggested that McGahn would be fired if he did not comply. Although we have to wonder who would fire him, because Trump never does it himself. Okay, let's see. Where are we? Number 4, right? Number 5, Trump asked Corey Lewandowski, his former campaign manager, to tell Attorney General Sessions to limit the special counsel's investigation only to future election interference. Trump said Lewandowski should tell Sessions he was fired if he would not meet with him. 6, Trump used his pardon power to influence his associates, including Paul Manafort and Michael Cohen, not to fully cooperate with the investigation. Trump, through his own statements, such as complaining about people who flip and talk to investigators, and through communications between his personal counsel and Manafort and Cohen, gave the impression that they would be pardoned if they did not fully cooperate with investigators. Manafort ultimately breached an agreement to cooperate with investigators, and Cohen offered false testimony to Congress, including denying that the Trump Tower Moscow project had extended to June 2016 and that he and Trump had discussed traveling to Russia during the campaign. We'll see if we can squeeze in the new news about that Trump Tower, too. Both men have been convicted for offering false information, and Manafort's lack of cooperation left open some significant questions, such as why exactly he provided an associate in Ukraine with campaign polling data which he expected to be shared with a Russian oligarch. Some of the president's actions were inherently corrupt. Other actions were corrupt and therefore impeachable because the president took them to serve his own interests. The president has authority to fire federal officials, to direct his subordinates, and to grant pardons, but he cannot do so for corrupt purposes. Otherwise, he would always be allowed to shut down any investigation into himself or his associates, which would put him above the law. That's where you would run into a problem area, you see. Okay, so let's see. I really needed to make notes for myself, except I find that there's no writing instrument here. Those of you, somebody out there take notes and tweet it back to me. I wanted to talk about, let's see, new information about, what Barr is up to, and new information about Trump Tower Moscow. So, of course, you all know by now what Barr is up to. There's a very strange play going on here in which Trump wants so badly for there to be an investigation, as he always has, into how the investigation into him started. He's so sure that there was some foul play there that he's authorizing a DOJ investigation into the origins of the investigation into him. And included in that is apparently some sort of presidential order giving Barr, the Attorney General, total authority to declassify any information that he feels he needs to declassify in this investigation. In other words, he's now going to be able to pore over the records of the intelligence community and declassify as he sees fit, which is to say selectively, to declassify information that he finds about how the investigation was originally motivated and came to be. So that seems also extraordinarily dangerous because, of course, selective declassification of information, well, it could lead to a lot of terrible outcomes and some dangerous outcomes at that, including, of course, the possibility that the information that is supposedly being declassified is itself false information, either because it hasn't been verified anywhere or because it's been made up out of whole cloth. But perhaps a little closer to the mark here, or at least a possibility that requires less imagination, is described by both Matt Iglesias and Brian Beutler in their tweets, which we'll discuss with you after this break. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Just writing myself the notes. I went and got a pencil. So let's see, Barr, and then we needed, what was the other thing? I've already forgotten. We'll have to go back and look at the end of the Amish tweet storm and remind myself it's very fleeting, my memory of these things, especially when I'm talking off the cuff this way. Let's see. No, it wasn't the pardons. Oh, yes, right. Trump Tower. Okay. So, little notes for myself now. A note to myself about where I'm going to put this note, and we should be ready to go. Okay, so we're continuing on with this discussion. I had said Matt Iglesias and Brian Beutler both had some interesting comments on what was going on. But first I need to run back and brief you on what's going on. It stems from Aaron Blake's tweet yesterday, picked up on by Matt Iglesias. Let's see, of course, Aaron Blake, senior political reporter for The Fix at the Washington Post. Okay, thank you. Okay, Scott just texted me the notes. I did. I mean that. I need that as production staff. Somebody get notes for me and tweet them to me, and then I'll be able to remind myself. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I got it. I tried to self-medicate on that one. Aaron Blake, reporter at the Washington Post, writer at The Fix, tweeting yesterday, breaking, Trump orders the declassification of certain intelligence to assist in William Barr's review of intelligence activities relating to the 2016 presidential campaigns. Screen grab here of parts of the order. Section 1, agency cooperation. I think I might have to actually read this here. The Attorney General is, let's start up at the top. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, I hereby direct the following. Boilerplate stuff, but I'm not sure he is the president. And Amish calls into question whether or not the Constitution and the laws of the United States do, in fact, duly authorize him to do these things, because he's doing them for corrupt purposes. But here we are. Section 1, agency cooperation. The Attorney General is currently conducting a review of intelligence activities relating to the campaign and the 2016 presidential election and certain related matters. The heads of elements of the intelligence community, as defined in 50 U.S. Code Section 3003, parens 4, and the heads of each department or agency that includes an element of the intelligence community, shall promptly provide such assistance and information as the Attorney General may request in connection with that review. Section 2, declassification and downgrading. With respect to any matter classified under Executive Order 13526 of December 29, 2009, parens, classified national security information, the Attorney General may, by applying the standard set forth in either Section 3.1a or Section 3.1d of Executive Order 13526, declassify, downgrade, or direct the declassification or downgrading of information or intelligence that relates to the Attorney General's review referred to in Section 1 of this memorandum. Before exercising this authority, the Attorney General should, to the extent he deems it practicable, consult with the head of the originating intelligence community element or department. This authority is not delegable and applies notwithstanding any other authorization or limit set forth in Executive Order 13526. So, legalese aside, William Barr is essentially handed the authority to declassify anything he finds there at his discretion. He is directed to the extent he deems practicable, consult with the heads of the IC actors or their department heads about it, but it doesn't have to. And if he deems it not practicable, he can just say so and declassify it on his own. So what sorts of dangers does that present? Well, all right, let's see. Now I have to go back, and it's a difficult thing the way Twitter works. If you just say, let's go back, it doesn't exactly do that. All right, so there's Aaron Blake's initial reporting. Matt Iglesias saying first, some cool things about this, which of course are not cool. One, again, Arabic numeral 1, not Roman. One, selectively declassifying things can be very misleading. We know that. 2, Barr likes to deliberately mislead the public to help Trump. We've seen him do it, right? 3, reporters are aware of number 2, that is, that Barr likes to deliberately mislead the public to help Trump. And 4, when 1 happens, the selective declassification, then despite 3, reporters being aware of Barr's proclivity, Barr's deceptions will generate credulous headlines. And that's probably true. And it's restated here by Brian Beutler more explicitly. Here's what will happen. 1, Barr will declassify information in incredibly misleading ways. 2, journalists will parrot it. 3, none of the intelligence chiefs Barr undermines will resign. And 4, none of the Dems with immunity and access to the full story will disclose it all because norms. And I think that's probably pretty true too. And it's dangerous at the very least. I mean, it's pretty much a recipe for huge disaster. As I put it, though, my worry about it was somewhat more extreme and perhaps required somewhat more imagination. But I envisioned Barr making claims that were wholly fabricated and saying that they were based in the intelligence he had reviewed. And then when people said, well, can we see the source of this information or find out who the source was or see what basis on what basis this was being asserted? Well, no, that's still classified. But I thought you were declassifying everything. Well, I'm not declassifying that. In other words, I'm declassifying what I declare to be the conclusions of this intelligence gathering, but not the underlying intelligence itself. Only I will declassify that if it makes my point. But what this creates is the possibility that you can make up whatever story you need, whatever would be best for you politically. Like, for instance, to give the most extreme possible example, to show what sort of thing you can get away with, I am sorry to announce, Bill Barr would say from his podium, I have the sad duty of reporting to you today that my review of the intelligence leading up to the launch of the investigation into alleged Russian interference in the 2016 campaign, has revealed documents in which Russian intelligence officials name Speaker of the House, now Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, as an active Russian asset during the 2016 election campaign, and that she approached them initially with a plot to undermine the Trump campaign and, following the election, to undermine the legitimacy of Mr. Trump's election to the presidency. And we are unfortunately going to have to charge her with treason. I don't know whether he even bother that, but the point here would be to say, yes, I have found documents in the CIA's files that report that they have it on good authority that the Russians are working directly with Nancy Pelosi, to which the assembled reporters would gasp and say, where is this document? Can we see it? And, I mean, I guess under this situation, Bill Barr could say, well, no, it's a classified document. Well, but one, you just told us what was in it. And two, I thought the whole thing was that you could declassify anything you wanted now. And he would say, yes, well, there are reasons, sources and methods that prevent me. In my view, it would be unwise to declassify the document. However, I am willing to share the part of the information in the document and the conclusion of the document. Well, if you've declassified that, why protect the document itself? And if it's not declassified and you've shared it with us, isn't that a problem? Well, no, it's not a problem because I have instant declassification authority. You can't charge me with leaking, whether I declassify the document or not. I'm declassifying the information, part of the information contained in the document, but I will not declassify the document. In other words, I won't show you the paper that proves this crazy ass assertion because it doesn't prove it. There is no paper. I just made it up. But I don't want you to know that or to be able to say that conclusively. You might guess it on your own, and I can't stop you from guessing. I can undermine your guess by saying, psh, I'm the one with access to this information. You can't just make stuff up. I've seen the document. You've seen nothing. But that doesn't happen because norms, right? But those norms now being out the window. In other words, wouldn't this work? Can't you just make up the story you want? And for any situation, too. I'm sorry. I'm standing here. I'm now checking IDs, photo IDs at the polls. And I'm working in a heavily black precinct. And you know what that means. They're Democrats. Maybe. Anyway, so, the first person comes up to vote. And, yeah, you're in the book here, but here, I got a problem. What's the problem? I have this note here from the Attorney General that says you are a Russian spy. I can't let you vote. What? That's actually the dumbest voter suppression idea I've ever heard, and I've been subject to all of them. What are you talking about? Your name comes up in a document at the CIA that says you're a Russian spy. And we're going to contest. This is not possible. You're not allowed to vote. We can't let a Russian spy vote. What are you talking about? Show me this document. I'm sorry, it's classified. The information has been passed along to me, but not the copy of the document. But peel that one all the way up the chain, and you get the same answer, right? Eventually, somebody presses for answers at a DOJ press conference. How is it possible that this happened? Well, I just explained to you the information inside is up to me to disclose, but it's also up to me to decide whether or not to declassify the document that contains it, and I'm not doing that. So you're just going to have to take my word for it. I'm the Attorney General. Why would I lie to you? Melvin Jones is a Russian spy. Follow-up, how is it that every single one of the, let's say, 6,459 Democrats registered at this precinct are all named in this memo? That seems an extraordinary coincidence. Well, the Russians, they're very devious. Now, that's beyond belief, right? The reaction would, of course, be incredulous. But, both sides just to be sure here, we haven't seen the documents, so we can't say for sure. Larger coincidence still, this has happened in every single one of 14,000 majority black precincts across the country with no notice whatsoever. And somehow, by the way, magically, in all of our elections mess, and we got the wrong book here, and somebody hacked the registration rolls there, and the machines don't work at this one and that one. They all got the same memo correctly somehow that named every single person in their. Obviously, this is the most extreme example, but what else could you get away with? If you can get away with, and I don't know if you can get away with that, but I mean, certainly people wouldn't believe you, but legally speaking, you'd be able to sit there and say that. But, so pick and choose your person, whether it's Nancy Pelosi, a favored candidate, Joe Biden. All this is ridiculous, right? I'm just talking out my ass. It's just fantasy. It's hyperbole. It's reductio ad absurdum. Is that the correct terminology for it, right? All right. Get back to reality for a second. All right, Joe Biden. He's leading the polls. There's, despite Charles Franklin's objections, there's some indication that Democrats could end up nominating Joe Biden as their candidate for president. So, how do you inoculate yourself against that, given that assumption if you're in the Trump campaign? Well, I don't know. How about if we say that we have access to some intelligence information that suggests that Joe Biden had some close relative who had some connection with Russians, Ukrainians, what have you, somewhere in this orbit, the Eastern European orbit, that suggested that there was some corrupt motive or purpose there. What outrageous! Especially as we have already been through this accusation and seen it debunked. We demand proof. Well, I can't give you the proof. The documents are classified, but I can tell you what they say. They say, Joe Biden totally did it, comrade, for instance. It might say that in there. And the point is that we can't prove it one way or another. The CIA can neither confirm nor deny. Nor will the Attorney General risk the lives of our brave men and women in the clandestine services by revealing the actual document. But we can tell you that what they risked their lives for, which was to find out how corrupt Joe Biden really was, which we assure you is totally true, and you should believe that and print that. And I don't know if anybody really doubts that the newspapers would say, wow, I really should believe that and print that, because we've seen them do it. So, any danger on the horizon? I don't know. You tell me. Okay, so let's see. There's other stuff. My note was for the Trump Tower thing, and I'm going to make another note to myself here. Why did I was just thinking about Jared Kushner. Yes. And Bill Barr being connected in some way. And let me write that down and use that as a note. Let's see. Should I flip that and then move to the Trump Tower thing? Let's try and do that. I was thinking about Jared Kushner and Bill Barr this morning because, and I have to pull this one out of the tweet stream here. There it is. I saw, let's see, NYC Southpaw talking about this new authority for Bill Barr. He was feeding off of Amy Fiscus and her tweet. She, a New York Times national security editor, tweeting, Barr wants to know more. What was he hunting for in all this, and why does he need this new authority? Barr wants to know more about the CIA's informants in Russia and what they passed along about the 2016 interference. Sources are among the CIA's most closely held secrets, she says, according to a New York Times story, which I probably won't be able to read as I have reached my 10 articles for the month, which, by the way, is should be inapposite because I should still have an active subscription, which I will be calling to cancel today. I know we've been toying with that for a long time, but I have new reason to cancel the subscription, and that is that I have noticed that they have been charging me on my credit card all this time and yet say I don't have a subscription. So that's pretty bad. And it's quite annoying and maybe even fraudulent, but there's a larger story to that. Anyway, the story, I now feel justified in cheating their system by reading you in pocket, is this. Trump gives Attorney General sweeping power to review of 2016 campaign inquiry. That's a Maggie Haberman and Michael Schmidt story, so you should be getting some salt out. Trump, okay, we know what he did. In the directive, Trump ordered the CIA and the country's 15 other intelligence agencies to cooperate. The order is a change for Mr. Trump, who last year dropped the plan to release documents related to the Russia investigation amid concerns from Justice Department officials who said making them public could damage national security. Now he doesn't care, right? Mr. Barr, who has used the word spying to describe how the Trump campaign was investigated, has been deeply involved in the department's review of how intelligence was collected on the campaign. I think we're clear on that one, too. So what he's after here is essentially... I guess we can jump back to Amy Fiscus's tweet here. He wants to know more about the CIA's informants in Russia and what they passed along about the interference. In other words, was this whole witch hunt based on, he's going to say, I'm looking into whether the witch hunt was based on disinformation. Did Russian contacts of the CIA feed the CIA disinformation that would lead them to believe that they had uncovered a plot to interfere with the election and thereby triggering a mistaken investigation into the possibility of the existence of this interference that would lead everybody on a wild goose chase, and the investigation too may have been peppered with disinformation. I mean, I guess that's all possible, right? It just seems like an extraordinary coincidence that they would have succeeded on every single front. But that's the theory. The Trump theory is that all of this was garbage that might have been fed by Russian disinformation, or might not have, but would have, but probably happened because all the people who were being fed this disinformation, or who might potentially have been fed information if, in case that disinformation doesn't exist, they could have been targeted with it because it was known to Russia and everyone else who had a pair of eyes that all of these people who were in a position to open an investigation were biased against Trump. And that's why he went on at such length about Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Oh, the lovers that are texting one another about an insurance policy, and they're going to get rid of Trump and make sure he doesn't. This is his theory on all this, that there was a widespread conspiracy at the top of the law enforcement and intelligence agencies to do anything they could to prevent Trump from taking office. The deep state was so super effective in this that, of course, he did take office. Whoops. It's really great. Anyway, so his theory is that, an investigation into that would lead us to the question of who did the CIA get information from in Russia? Well, okay. That would even be like a natural area of inquiry if you bypass the question of should this be inquired about, or is it proper to have this person who's such a Trump loyalist that he'll lie about everything do the inquiring. So Southpaw here is tweeting about what Amy Fiscus's tweet and just notes shudder at that, but then goes on to explain a little bit more. It says, hard to express, and it is hard, how much this is none of Bill Barr's business. It doesn't even map to their conspiracy theories about improper FBI surveillance of the Trump campaign. As reported, it's, he says, a hostile inquiry into CIA surveillance of Putin. And he's got a screen grab here along with a highlighted portion. It says, one official who spoke on a condition of anonymity, blah, 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 said previously that and here's the highlighted part, Mr. Barr wanted to know more about what foreign assets the CIA had in Russia in 2016 and what those informants were telling the agency about how President Vladimir Putin of Russia sought to meddle in the 2016 election. The rest of the grab says the CIA on Thursday referred questions to the Director of National Intelligence. So that's the key part. Barr wants to know more about what foreign assets the CIA had in Russia. And that is worrisome because, of course, that would be among the top secrets, I guess, that the United States would have, and it would jeopardize their ability to get any more information out of Russia and into the hands of our intelligence operatives. But, of course, if you're starting from the assumption that they were getting garbage in the first place and or were biased against Trump, you would, of course, conclude that it would be great if they were murdered by their Russian counterparts. Who cares? They'd be out of our way and out of our hair, and it's not our problem. We didn't kill them. Who cares if we give up their identities? Now, Brian Beutler countered a little bit and said, now here's how it might map. Barr hopes or expects to find information that he can use to suggest that the intelligence community knew the Steele dossier contained disinformation. Of course, even if that's right, it's still completely nuts that this is happening. And since I saved this thing, there's been a response from Southpaw. You don't need to get their sources exposed to you if what you're looking for is whether contradictory information about the dossier was in the CIA's possession. You need the sources to burn down American intelligence's networks in Russia going forward. Yeah, and my take on that, by the way, was that, and here's where the connection comes in, that is the Kushner MBS play. And I guess I need to explain that a little bit more. But what we're looking at here, as Southpaw lays it out, is Kushner substitute. You remember the Kushner MBS play. That is to say, Kushner gains access to critical intelligence by virtue of him assigning himself as a principal for the purposes of receiving the president's daily briefing, right? Even though that's our top security document, and he has no effing business whatsoever having a security clearance, and Trump had to fix it for him and jury rig it for him and order him to be given the clearance in order for him to get this PDB at all. And that, too, is probably an impeachable offense all by itself. But that's a story for another day. And we had that other day. We covered it. So Kushner gains access or rigs for himself access to the PDB. The PDB says, gives him, among other things, the names of intelligence contacts inside Saudi Arabia who are reporting to the intelligence community about MBS, what he's up to, and how he's doing, and what he might have in mind for the future. MBS trying to consolidate his own power and staying up until 4 a.m. to BS with Kushner and contacting him on WhatsApp at all hours, et cetera, having all sorts of secret discussions with him. Says, geez, it would be really great if it would be so much easier for me to do what I'm going to do and settle things. And that would be in your interest, too, because, of course, like the conversation begins this way. Jared says, you know what would be great? You guys have like a ton of oil money. Could you give me some of that money and I could shore up my own stupid real estate empire, which is collapsing? I don't know. I guess I could do that. But boy, it's so complicated. I mean, for me to get that money out of our sovereign wealth fund, I need certain other headaches. I got so much to do. I need those headaches taken care of. I have to settle my affairs here in the kingdom before I can start thinking about spending money outside of the kingdom. Well, like what's in your way? Well, for instance, I'm having difficulty consolidating my power. And I can't, at this point, feasibly direct the sovereign wealth fund to just hand over money to a terrible risk like you, without having my power consolidated. Well, what's standing in the way of that? Well, all these members of the royal family, other actors of some influence here in the kingdom who can counter my moves. Now, if they were all dead or cut up into pieces or both, whichever the chronology may be, or arrested and imprisoned in the Ritz-Carlton or something like that, then I would have a free hand to invest in your project, perhaps, or I could more easily direct money your way. Oh, well, it just so happens I have that list because the CIA is talking to those people about you. Would you like the list? I have it in this PDB. Here it is. Terrific. Thank you very much for the information. I now go and kill and imprison all my enemies. Well, what if Bill Barr was handed a similar list of all the CIA assets in Russia and could turn that over to Putin in exchange for, I don't know, God knows what. What would the difference be? Who cares what it would? If it was a handful of candy, it's still bad news. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, with a brand new interruption to say thanks to all of you who support the show. Remember when I told you that our average monthly donation was about $7, for which you were getting 2 great hours of news and entertainment 5 days a week, and how that came out to about 70 cents an hour? That's a pretty good deal, except it's wrong. The math actually works out closer to 17 cents an hour. It is hard to beat a deal like that, and even harder to send your kids to college on. Thankfully, Patreon.com makes it easy to make that work. Patreon, Patreon.com, is the simple, secure way to make recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Just search for me or the show name on the site, and they make it easy to crowdfund the show so that the power of our numbers can keep the show going for just a few bucks a month. Once again, thanks so much for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So I think I've summarized it all in tweet form just before we left for the break. Yeah, well, essentially, what I'm worried about here is Jared Kushner rigs for himself access to information that is valuable to MBS and immediately blabs it to MBS in exchange for we don't know exactly what, but at least we can imagine it. Bill Barr now has access to the intelligence community's lists of all of the assets in Russia. Who might want that list? Vladimir Putin, among others. What would he get in exchange? I don't know. It's a little bit more difficult to tell, but he's there in service of Trump. Kushner, I don't know whether it's better or worse. Kushner had his own interests at heart and sold out the country for that. Barr has Trump's interests at heart and I guess is going to do that and can now help Vladimir Putin. What can I do for you today, Vladimir Putin? Instead of just doing whatever you tell me, I can also give you a list of the names and addresses of all the people who are jeopardizing your oligarchy so that you can read newspaper reports about their accidentally falling out windows later on. Dangerous? Yeah, of course, right? I think we all know that. Okay, so that ought to depress the hell out of you. There's more, of course. I mentioned the Trump Tower thing because that is very often held up as part of the quid pro quo that Trump has always been pursuing with his with his submission to Vladimir Putin. And it came up again, it comes up every day. It's always in some context. But I saw something the other day. I'm going to have to scroll back a little bit more. I think, what was it? It was probably like in Forbes magazine. Maybe I should be looking for that. Which had new information about the Trump Tower and basically that the whole deal was considerably less valuable, as it turns out, to Trump than he might originally have thought. In other words, that he had gotten somehow bargained down in all of this and was now pursuing something at the risk of the national security of the United States that really wasn't even near worth what he might have originally thought. Selling us out for considerably less than he thought it was going to get. Here we are. Forbes magazine, The Truth Behind Trump Tower. We'll see. The Truth Behind Trump Tower Moscow. How Trump Risked Everything for a giant pop-up. Okay. How Trump risked everything for a relatively tiny deal. So this is a May 23rd piece in Forbes. Let's see how long it is. I don't know. We'll see how much we can get through of it, but maybe we can just take a taste and then dive into something else. Dan Alexander and Richard Behar as byliners on this one. It says the story appears in the June special 2019 issue of Forbes magazine, if you're interested in finding it in print. And it brings back our old pal, Felix Sater. It's getting late, and Felix Sater, a one-time Trump partner, two-time convicted felon, and longtime government cooperator, don't forget that part, sits in the back of a New York City restaurant ready for a drink. A very dirty martini, Russian vodka, he tells the waiter. A collusion martini. He makes collusion jokes. No one outside of the Trump organization has more first-hand knowledge of Donald Trump's connections to Russia than Felix Sater. And if he's a government cooperator, you'd feel like we should know more. But anyway, in 2006, he scouted a potential deal in Moscow with the president's children, Don Jr. and Ivanka. We've seen the pictures. In 2007, he stood alongside Trump at a launch party for a hotel Sater had helped get built, the Trump Soho, which he marketed partially to Russian buyers. And during the 2016 presidential campaign, Sater helped plan a giant Trump Tower in Moscow. Here's to fun times, he said, hoisting his martini glass in the air. Fun times indeed. Special Counsel Robert Mueller's 448-page report highlights 3 separate proposals to develop a Trump property in Moscow around the time of the election. Yet key details have remained vague. Forbes got in touch with the people at the center of all 3 and uncovered concrete answers. Concrete answers, as we heard earlier. Concrete answers to fundamental questions about Trump's plan in Russia. Such as, who was going to pay for the project? Always important around Trump. Trump, now more of a licensor than a builder, certainly wasn't planning on putting in much of his own money, if he has any. And according to Sater, who brokered the proposal that extended furthest into the campaign, nor was Trump's official partner, Andrei Rozov. Instead, Sater says, he was cooking up a plan to raise huge sums from additional investors, including 2 of Vladimir Putin's closest cronies, Boris and Arkady Rotenberg. We would have gone to them and asked them for $400 or $500 million cash, Sater says. Another big, previously unsettled question, how much money could Trump have made in all this? Both Mueller and former Trump attorney Michael Cohen have suggested vaguely hundreds of millions. After mining business agreements and surveying real estate experts in Moscow, however, Forbes believes that it's almost impossible. It seems more likely that Trump would have walked away with roughly $35 million up front and $2.6 million or so in annual fees if everything went according to plan. That's a lot cheaper. In the rosiest of scenarios, Sater says, Trump could have gotten about $50 million. A lot of money to most people, but less than 2% of the president's net worth. It says here, estimated at $3.1 billion. I disagree, but okay. And really, so does Forbes, quite honestly. I don't know what that's doing in here. Taken together, these revelations paint a new picture of Trump's plans in Russia and the president's way of doing business. His deal came with far greater risk and far less reward than previously understood. I don't know, he probably considers this exculpatory, don't you think? In short, candidate Trump jeopardized his eventual presidency on a middling deal, and one that would have Vladimir Putin's fingerprints all over it, and therefore compromise him. Though part of the reason the Trump Tower Moscow narrative confuses people, there were 3 different attempts to attach the president's name to a Russian property in recent years. The first one emanates from the infamous 2013 Miss Universe contest, where 86 women strutted through a Moscow concert hall. Donald Trump, the co-owner of the pageant, took home the money, collecting an estimated $3 million from the local hosts, billionaire real estate tycoon Aras Agalarov and his son Emin, a pop singer. You know them. I had a great weekend with you and your family, Trump tweeted afterward, tagging the elder Agalarov. You have done a fantastic job. Trump Tower Moscow is next. 1 month later, in December 2013, the Trump Organization signed an agreement to brand an Agalarov property in Moscow, according to the Mueller report. The plan eventually called for 800 apartments near the concert venue that hosted the Miss Universe contest, with 3.5% of sales going to Trump. If the whole building sold out, Amin Agalarov estimates Trump would have come away with $17 million or so. Trump's daughter, Ivanka, toured the site in February of 2014. That same month, though, the geopolitical landscape was shifting. Crowds were in the streets of Kiev, protesting Ukraine's Russia-friendly president, Viktor Yanukovych. He ultimately fled Ukraine, reportedly with the help of Putin. Within weeks, Putin sent soldiers into Crimea, a Ukrainian region neighboring Russia, effectively taking over. The land grab sparked outrage in the international community, and the United States retaliated with economic sanctions. Those measures, combined with falling oil prices, crippled the Russian economy, including the Moscow real estate market. The average price of new apartments plummeted an estimated 30% in 2014. Condos were selling for less than the cost of construction. Even in the unlikely event that the Agalarovs managed to build something amid all the turmoil, Amin Agalarov tells Forbes that Trump's payout would have been cut in half. Communications between the Trumps and the Agalarovs began to fade in the fall of 2014, according to the Mueller report. Donald Trump Jr. later told the Senate Judiciary Committee the project died because of deal fatigue. A more likely cause of death, U.S. sanctions. Now there's a complicated map in here of a who's who in Towergate here. One of those crazy things with lots of pictures of people and arrows pointing all over the place, but we'll skip that for now. In November of 2015, Donald Trump, by then a presidential candidate, sat down with former Fox News host Bill O'Reilly, who challenged him over his accommodating stance toward Russia. Putin doesn't make deals, O'Reilly reasoned. He just rolls soldiers in to cause destruction and shoots down airplanes. Well, Trump replied, he does what he has to do. Wow, that is some response. Unbeknownst to the American public, the Trump Organization, which did not respond to requests for comment on this story, was secretly communicating about a second potential deal in Russia around the same time, which I guess explains the absolutely ridiculous response to, of all people, Bill O'Reilly hands you an opportunity to be tough on Russia and you won't do it. Okay. In September of 2015, nearly a year after the Agalarov partnership dropped off, and with Trump now leading the Republican primary race, his lawyer, Michael Cohen, traded messages with a man named Georgy, oh boy goodness, he's a Georgian guy, I guess, Georgy Ritskiladze. How about that? Have we tried that name before? Ritskiladze? According to the Mueller report. Cohen and Ritskiladze had previously worked together on business in the former Soviet states of Georgia and Kazakhstan. Before I go on here, by the way, remember that not that long ago, we heard, I guess, from the Mueller report that it was, what was it from the Mueller report? That the first indication that the P tape was not a real thing, but in fact some sort of fake, right? Some disinformation, at the very least, about the existence of such a tape, but that it was said in sort of vague way that that the tapes had been taken care of, but that they had been in the possession of people with whom he had cooperated from the Crocus group. I don't know whether they made mention of the Crocus group's role in the 2013 pageant, but the Crocus group is the Agalarovs' company. And that nobody called that out at the time, I think, except us. It was said, you're saying that the Agalarovs, who made out to be such great friends and who arranged the Trump Tower New York meeting in June of 2016 with Veselnitskaya and all the rest that caused so many problems, they arranged that meeting. They had this tape, whether that was fake or not, whether they knew it was fake or not. What would these people who were supposedly his friends and partners be doing with this tape? And I guess if you recall that everybody who makes it as an oligarch in Russia is mobster as well. I mean, here Amin Agalarov is talking about having Trump's cut in the take from Trump Tower Moscow cut in half by economic conditions. But if you remember that these guys are mobsters, it's not that hard to imagine, okay, the contract says you get 3.5% of all the sales. But we're doing really well here now, and the economy has flipped, and we're making money hand over fist. We just don't want to give it all to you. How would you fix that? Well, I'll sue you. I have a contract that says 3.5%. Well, we have something that will make you decide not to sue and to accept 1.5 or 1.25% instead, literally cutting your take in half because we want that money, and that is this P-tape. Fake or not. Whether they know it's fake or not, whether it is fake or not. Why would the Agalarovs be interested in holding on to something like that? In order to say, well, if the deal gets too big and we make $100 million and we're supposed to send you $3.5 million, I want more of that money. So I will blackmail you with this thing and say, unless you shut up and take half, I'm going to release this tape. Might not work as well if he's not president. I don't know. But that's reason enough for somebody like that who says they're friends of his to nonetheless hold on to information that could be used to blackmail him. Just wanted to point that out. Anyway, back to the Forbes story, which doesn't contain that information. Riscaladze sent Cohen a draft of a letter ultimately intended for the mayor of Moscow, which pitched a Trump development as a symbol of strengthening ties between the United States and Russia. Who loves that, right? Who loves that line? According to the Mueller report. The mayor is aware of the potential project and will pledge his support, the note said, according to the report. Who cares about what the mayor of Moscow has to say, right? I mean, that's not Putin. But then again, remember, what Boris Yeltsin, remember that guy? I think he was mayor of Moscow. And then he was president of Russia. So I guess it's a big deal. Who's Trump's idiot lawyer? The mayor of New York City. We have the same problem here. He was running for president before. Today, Riscaladze says he was just passing along the message on behalf of a longtime friend and that friend's acquaintance. He claims the letter never made it to the mayor, and he suggests he's not even sure if what he sent Cohen was accurate. I don't know if it's true or not, if the mayor's office was ever notified, okay? That's how it goes in Russia, a place where trust is in short supply and outsiders can suddenly find themselves in unnerving situations, like my good friend has a P-tape, and I have to give up all my money now. Riscaladze says he had previously warned Cohen of the risks. You have to be careful who you get involved with. Caution, however, is not the Trump way. Cohen dismissed the Riscaladze plan and chose to pursue a third proposal, brokered by a man with a checkered past, Sater. Moscow-born, Brooklyn-bred, Sater started a career on Wall Street until a bar fight. He stabbed a man in the face with a margarita glass. Remember that one? Led to 15 months in prison. 3 years after his release, he pleaded guilty to racketeering in a mob-connected pump-and-dump stock scheme. He stayed out of prison this time by working with the feds, ultimately supplying information about the mafia, North Korea, Russian cyber criminals, even Osama bin Laden. At Sater's sentencing, about a decade after he began cooperating with the government, FBI agent Leo Taddeo, depending on how he pronounces that, one of Sater's handlers at the Bureau, credited him with helping pave the way for law enforcement to basically eliminate the mob from Wall Street's penny stock business. Former FBI official Ray Kerr adds, there was nothing he wouldn't do or wouldn't try. I'm not certain how to take that. At the same time that he was serving as a government cooperator, Sater reinvented himself as a real estate deal maker. It was in that role that he ended up working with the Trump Organization on projects in Arizona, Florida, New York, and ultimately Russia. For the Moscow effort, Sater served as both broker and deal maker. His friend Andrei Rozov, who did not respond to our request for comment, was officially the local developer in Russia, but Sater says he expected a cut for himself as well. Trump signed a letter of intent dated October 28, 2015, the same day as the third Republican presidential debate. The tower was meant to be the tallest building in Europe. Of course he was going to say that. Featuring a few floors of prime shopping, a high-end hotel, and a new office space, topped with 250 luxury residences, homes for the Russian elite. According to the terms, Rozov was on the hook for construction, while Trump would simply lend his name and help manage the place once it opened. No, he wouldn't. In exchange, according to the Mueller report, the presidential contender would get a cut of condo sales beginning with 5% of the first $100 million and gradually stepping down to 1% of everything over $1 billion. Sater says each unit would have been about 2,500 square feet, far larger than the typical luxury condo in Moscow. They were targeting a price of about $1,500 a square foot, about 30% above the average for luxury apartments in town. If all went well, Trump would have walked away with an estimated $34 million from condo sales and upfront fees. Big money, sure, but nothing nothing life-changing for a guy worth $3.1 billion. But he really isn't. To juice the numbers, Sater said, he wanted to give away a penthouse to Putin. To juice the numbers. On top of the terrible optics, this could have put the Trump organization in danger of violating the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which bans American companies from bribing foreign officials. Sater says the plan was not meant to entice the Russian president. You've got to have $1 billion for Putin to take you seriously, he said. It's good for Congressman, it's good for Congressman Nancy Pelosi or Schiff to say that, but in the real world, Vladimir Putin ain't getting bought with a penthouse. When contacted, a representative of Putin deflected questions, saying, "We believe that you should address the relevant authorities, not to the press office of the president of Russia." To Trump, small amounts of money matter. The Tower Agreement details the slices he could shave off every year, including hotel management fees, that's an estimated $1.3 million, office rents, estimated $240,000, residential management fees, an estimated $225,000, spa operations, Ivanka, right, $75,000, and so on. Add everything up, and Forbes figures Trump could have gotten an additional $2.6 million annually, math verified by Sater, who confirmed an Excel spreadsheet that details the project payments line by line. Count enough years, and it's theoretically possible to get to any number. $13 million over 5 years, $67 million over 25, $94 million over 35 years. Regardless, even with the condo deals, it wasn't really close to the hundreds of millions Cohen and Mueller cited. Robert Mueller did not find collusion to steal the 2016 election, or at least he wouldn't say so, but he did find evidence of collusion to try to make money. Sater and Cohen did the work on the ground, rubbing elbows with oligarchs and Russian government entities. In sworn testimony before Congress, whatever that was worth, Cohen left no doubt about who was ultimately in charge. To be clear, Mr. Trump knew of and directed the Trump-Moscow negotiations throughout the campaign and lied about it. There was good reason to lie, given the cast of characters involved. On October 9th, 2015, before Trump had even signed the letter of intent, Sater wrote that he was meeting with Andrei Molchanov, a former member of the Russian Senate who controlled a plot of land that could work for the tower. 3 days later, Sater claimed the chairman of VTB, a Kremlin-controlled bank on which the U.S. imposed sanctions, was on board with the project. A spokesman for VTB said the bank never dealt with Sater or his affiliates in Russia. Ultimately, Sater secured an invitation to Russia from a different bank, days after it had also landed on the U.S. sanctions list. Then, there was Sater's plan to get billionaire brothers Arkady and Boris Rotenberg to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in the project. From a political standpoint, it would be hard to think of a more problematic pair to bring into a deal with a U.S. presidential candidate. Arkady Rotenberg has known Vladimir Putin since childhood, when they were judo partners. He and his brother are now among Russia's richest people, worth an estimated $3.7 billion combined, with interests in banking and construction. Arkady Rotenberg's company's got a $7.4 billion contract from the government for the 2014 Olympic Games in Sochi, over $5 billion for the 2018 World Cup, remember that, which Russia hosted, and more to build a bridge connecting Russia and Crimea. In 2014, the U.S. Treasury Department sanctioned both brothers, identifying them as members of Putin's inner circle. The Rotenbergs didn't respond to requests for comment. The same thing that made the Rotenbergs targets of the U.S. government, their ties to Putin, made them appealing to Sater. In his mind, if he could get Putin's associates to invest $400 to $500 million, then the Russian president would surely greenlight the project, a key step in a country where the government calls the shots on major real estate developments. Trump would have theoretically had to sign off on bringing in the Rotenbergs or anyone else who wanted a piece of the action, Everybody was going to make money from this, Sater says. And at the end of the day, some schmuck from Vladivostok with a lot of money would have put up all the money. It's not clear whether Trump knew about the plans to give Putin a penthouse, or his cronies a chunk of the deal, which is remarkable in itself. A presidential candidate delegated a radioactive deal in a hostile foreign country to a former convict, Sater, and a soon-to-be convict, Cohen. Virtually every part of their plan involved Putin or someone close to him. The equity? Putin's boys. The debt? Kremlin-connected banks. The land? A Putin ally. The approvals? Government entities. The marketing? Putin himself. Look at Trump Moscow long enough and it gives the impression it was less of a deal between Trump and a random Russian and more of a deal between Trump and Putin. It also came with a lot of bluster. By December 2015, Trump's men still had not locked in a plot of land or financing or investors, and Cohen was waiting on an official invitation to Russia. I will not let you F with my job and playing point person, Cohen texted Sater between Christmas and New Year's. Far cry from the Buddy Boy stuff, right? According to correspondence first released by BuzzFeed and confirmed by Forbes. I still have no numbers from anyone who was allegedly involved in this deal, other than the fact I will have whatever invite I need within 48 hours. Not you or anyone you know will embarrass me in front of Mr. T, Trump, when he asks me what is happening. And don't worry, we'll take care of embarrassing you. Cohen told Sater he was done working with him, and the text stream devolved into something like a souring love affair. Please don't do this, Michael, Sater wrote. We're done, Cohen responded. Enough. I told you last week that you thinking you are running point on this is inaccurate. You're putting my job in jeopardy and making me look incompetent. I gave you 2 months, and then best you send me is some BS effing garbage invite by some no-name clerk at a third-tier bank. So I'm telling you enough as of right now. Enough. I will handle this myself. Okay. Cohen, who did not respond to a request for comment for this article, reached out to the office of Putin's press secretary, Dmitry Peskov. On January 20th, 2016, he heard back from Peskov's assistant. They talked for 20 minutes about a tower in Moscow, and Cohen came away impressed, according to the Mueller report. Cohen updated Trump, remarking that it would be nice if the Trump organization had assistants who were as good as the Kremlin's. The report said, well, he had Hope Hicks. How does she do it? Sater texted Cohen the next day. Call me when you have a few minutes to chat, he wrote. It's about Putin. They called today. Money has a way of repairing relationships. Cohen and Sater eventually sketched out plans to travel to Russia. Cohen talked to Trump about it, and the candidate said he would be willing to go as well, so long as Cohen could lock and load on the deal. He's so tough, according to the Mueller report. Cohen settled on a rough timeline. My trip before Cleveland, he texted Sater, referencing the Republican National Convention. Trump, once he becomes the nominee. My trip before Cleveland, Trump after, right? On May 5th, 2016, Sater followed up with Cohen, offering promising news. Peskov said he would like to invite you as his guest to the St. Petersburg Forum, which is Russia's Davos. It's June 16th to 19th. He wants to meet there with you and possibly introduce you to either Putin or Medvedev. But Sater was apparently bluffing. He now says he never actually had an invitation from Peskov, although he was confident he would meet some heavy hitters at the conference. When the Peskov invitation failed to materialize, Cohen called off the trip, according to the Mueller report, and checked in with Trump. But he did not tell the boss that the deal was off, since there still seemed to be a chance it could come back to life in the closing months of the campaign. Or possibly afterward, when Trump would return to just being Donald Trump, private citizen, I guess according to the plans. Sigh. What ultimately killed Trump Moscow was not all the bluster, nor the ties to the Russian oligarchs, nor even the limited financial upside. When asked why the deal ended, in the sworn congressional hearing, Cohen pointed to one part of the plan that went awry. He won the presidency. And that's it. And we made it through the whole story, and that's pretty amazing. Time now, though, to hand things over to Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I did mention earlier, and I'll give you a link to take a look at it. We didn't get back to the other crazy deal, which was Trump pressuring people on the wall again and wanting to give a contract to a North Dakota firm who had, I guess, contributed heavily to his campaign. But it's another story about Trump meddling at the fabric swatch level in the construction of the walls. Remember last week when the story was that he thought the doors were too narrow? Apparently this week's story is he wanted the doors to be double doors, French doors. Why not French doors? Because he's interior decorating. Again, President Barbie Dreamhouse at it again and meddling in the stupid wall. Good. Let him meddle forever and never get built. Let him spend his life on the golf course. Never build this wall. I don't care. Lots more to get to. Things that we couldn't get to today, maybe we can get to on Monday. I don't know. Man, it's a crazy weekend. I hope we survive it. I hope you can relax. Have a good Memorial Day weekend. Oh, I got to decide what I'm going to do on Monday. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. I'll let you know ahead of time. We'll figure it all out. In the meantime, Justice Putnam is up next, and he's got an incredible lineup as usual. Let's see what we can squeeze in for you here. Representative Lauren Underwood's comments in the committee on separated and dead kids in ICE custody. Amazing comments. She's doing great in these hearings as well.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
I'm going to stick with this story because they were so amazing, in fact, that she had her words taken down. She had said it's a policy choice being made on purpose by this administration, and it's cruel and inhumane. And what ended up happening, somehow, there were so many people who had walked out of the hearing. There was a majority in there that was Republican. They took her words down from the record. We weren't on hand to help.